sure if I'm John Dougall or is it John Swallow? Thanks for letting me borrow your name for a moment. I'm John Dougall, running for state auditor. Yeah, like he said, it's that exciting race you're all talking about. I have to apologize sometimes to the U.S. Senate candidates because we get so much attention in this race. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a disruptor. That's where I come from. My background, I've got a bachelor's, master's in electrical engineering, and an MBA. I cut my teeth in business in the high-tech sector. Disrupted companies, disrupted technologies. 10 years ago, I entered the legislature. I served Northeast Utah County, Alpine Highland, and American Fork area. I've been a disruptor in the legislature ever since. I currently serve as the #2 guy in charge of the whole state budget in the House. $13 billion budget, a lot of responsibilities to understand what's going on there. Used to serve as the chair of the Revenue and Taxation Committee, also chaired the Health and Human Services Committee. So when Senator Lillianquist talks about Medicaid reform, I was his House sponsor on that, teaming with him to bring greater accountability to Medicaid. I was House sponsor of one of the largest tax cuts the state's ever seen. And this came after Representative Swallow. He had the largest tax cut when he came through. I came through a few years later with another tax cut. In the legislature, I always look to bring more accountability to state agencies. I always represented the taxpayers. I understood who's paying the bills. As I toured the state, I've talked with folks. Time and time again, what do they say? They talk about the burden of taxes on their families and on their businesses. They talk about how hard it is, especially in this kind of economy. They talk about how angry they get when they see those tax dollars wasted. And so one of the key things I've talked about is making sure the State Auditor's Office understands the full breadth of duties and responsibilities that it has. We've got to do a better job when it comes to compliance audits. When we have issues that are identified 15 years ago, written up in a memo and nothing else, to me that's unacceptable. You have to bring accountability, whether it's to the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, the Health Department when it comes to Medicaid. You have to do more than just simply write a memo. Now when it comes to performance, you have to implement performance audits. You have to bring accountability. You have to measure. What you don't measure, you don't improve. We all know that saying. Performance audits is the tool to measure what's going on in government, to bring more accountability to what's happening, to bring more accountability to how your dollars are being spent. As your state auditor, I will focus on that. I will continue to be a champion for the taxpayers to bring more accountability within state government. Now, a lot of folks tease me about a nickname I have. My nickname is Frugal Dougall. My first name is John, not Frugal. But Frugal Dougall is a nickname that my friends and colleagues tease me about. Where does that come from? I don't like to waste taxpayer dollars. I don't like to waste money. That's where I'm coming from. That's the mindset, that's the perspective. I believe that's what you need. We talked earlier about the annual financial statement audit. I described that, that's like getting to first base. Yes, you got to get to first base. Second base, you got to do compliance audits. Third base, you got to do performance audits. And bringing it home, you got to work with the agencies and you got to work with policymakers to bring about the changes that you recommend in your audits. You don't politicize early audits. You work with the agencies to bring about change. But if those agencies don't change, then you have to get with the governor, the legislature, and others to bring that accountability that the public expects. The public wants a watchdog in the state auditor's office. They want a watchdog looking out for their taxes. I'm John Dougall. I'm running for state auditor. Thank you very much.
Health and Human Services Committee. The Health Department came wanting to have more money for smoking prevention and cessation. And so, one of the key things I brought to their attention is I said, well, wait a second. Don't you guys have a smoking shack, or also called a butt hut? And they're like, how do you know about that? And stuff. And so the smoking shack was a glass enclosed area, heated, had chairs in there. Employees who smoked would take their break in the smoking shack. They'd come outside the building and smoke in that place. And I'm going, wait a second. If you want more money to stop smoking, then why are you making it really convenient for your employees to smoke? There seems to be a disconnect there. And so I brought attention to this issue. And they're like, Representative, I don't think you understand what this place is. Let's take you to it. I said, no, I've already been. In fact, I sent my intern over there. He started timing people's smoke breaks. do you know you have some employees taking 30-minute smoke breaks? No. And quickly that brought the health department to realize that if they want to be serious about smoking prevention cessation, they really got to start at home with employees first and foremost before they try and push it everywhere else and ask for more money. And it was, well, I mean, it's just one of those things of, I mean, getting in the details of saying, wait a second, this is inconsistent, this is irrational, you got to fix this. So that's one of the things. So I used to chair the Revenue and Taxation Committee, used to co-chair the Health and Human Services Committee. I'm currently the number 2 guy in charge of the whole state budget, which means I'm the vice chair of executive appropriations.
You are currently in the legislature?
Yes.
But you're running...
I'm running for this. Yeah, I'm retiring at the end of the year.
Their money. They didn't get
What's that?
whole funding. That's the best bang for the buck in education there is.
Well, there's lots of dynamics in education for funding. Lots of folks demanding it. One of the dynamics we had there was the WPU and the increase, which is maximum flexibility for schools. And so that's, you know, one of those.
Maximum foundation matches is way high.
Yeah, that's one of those things. There's debates on the pros and cons of that program. So, because there's others that don't like it, and they want it in the WPU because they want maximum flexibility. Sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
You mentioned how you want to be a champion for the taxpayers.
Well, I've been a champion for the taxpayers.
So you've been one.
Yeah, no, for the last 10 years. I mean, you look, when it comes to how we spend money, I'm always looking to cut taxes. I'm always looking to return money back to the taxpayers. You know, carrying the largest tax cut the state's ever seen, looking to say, you know, year after year, I'm always trying to cut taxes. Because I say, you know, the taxpayers know better how to spend their own money than we do. And so I'm always looking to say, how do you give it back to them? And so my whole time in the legislature, that's where I've come from.
Okay. Because that kind of resonated with me.
Uh-huh.
Because I've been unemployed for a couple of years, so I made my own company as an independent contractor.
Uh-huh.
And so I work when there's a contract. When the contract ends, I'm looking again.
Right.
So sometimes I'm unemployed. So I'm on unemployment. This last year, I had to pay a lot of tax to the state of Utah, and it just seems like it's excessive.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's excessive, and I think there's a lack of. I mean, if you look, unfortunately, from the legislative perspective, there's insufficient data to make a lot of decisions. There's a lot of emotion swirling around about activities, but you just don't have the data to make those decisions, and that's part of where performance audits come in, of doing a better job measuring the efficiencies and inefficiencies within government, so that policymakers can then take action.
So is this performance audit what you're saying would help in those situations?
Yeah, it would help identify where there's waste.
Part of the auditor's function.
Part of the duties. Not part of what they view that they're doing right now, but it's supposed to be part of their duties.
Okay, so
they're authorized.
As an auditor, you would make sure you do performance audits.
Absolutely.
I think you named 3 things: performance audits, compliance audits, and something else.
Well, there's the annual financial statement audits.
Well, that's the annual thing.
Yeah, you got to keep doing that. You got to restore a relationship or build a relationship with policymakers, which doesn't exist today. So,
What do you mean, Mike?
if the state auditor walked through the legislature today, they wouldn't know who he is. They knew who the governor is and the governor's team. They know the attorney general and his team.
Okay.
They know the treasurer. Unfortunately, they don't know the state auditor. Hang on one second. Is that good enough for us? I mean, we're starting to repeat.
Thank you very much.
Story?
Yeah, he says he always refers it to the Inspector General, the governor's office. What's the rest of the story?
Are you okay with it?
Yeah. So the rest of the story is when the legislature identified these issues within Medicaid
Yeah.
that the state auditor had not identified, we went to create the Office of Inspector General. Now, the natural place to put that office would have been in the state auditor's office. He refused. He did not want to touch it. So we ended up putting it in the governor's office of planning and budget.
Oh, so you had
So-
to create a new...
We created a new office of Inspector General, ended up putting it in the governor's office because the state auditor's office didn't want to touch it. So that's the rest of the story. And before that, when they had the issues of internal auditors with inadequate independence, state auditors should have been identifying those problems. Should have identified that we had lack of independence but they didn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he told me that the state auditor is the only independent auditor. All the rest, legislative audit general, inspector general, and tax auditors are not independent because they're basically working for their groups.
That is correct.
That's correct.
And you need to function as an independent auditor and actually do your job rather than looking for others to do it for you.
Oh.
So
If you were elected, you would kind of
well, when you find those issues, for example, let's roll the clock back. When you found issues with lack of independence within Medicaid and issues there with, lack of, oversight, if you will, you'd identify that for the governor. You'd identify that for the legislature. You'd help them understand the problems that they have so they can start restructuring to bring the independence that's necessary for that oversight. When you sit there and focus, if you will, on certain financial issues that are low risk to the taxpayer, when you got Medicaid with tens of millions of dollars going out the back window, and payment and billing errors, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. And then, and then when the legislature goes to create that office to bring the oversight that's necessary, and as a state auditor, they don't even want to touch it.
they don't want it in your office.
They don't want it in their office. I mean, yeah, you can say, I don't do Medicaid. Well, you specifically made sure that it wasn't in your office.
I see. Well, thanks for telling us the rest of the story.
Thank you.